Accessing library computer data.
And to make sure history never forgets the name Enterprise.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Pensky Podcast. You haven't tuned in before, this is a podcast where we are running through all 178 episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, giving our thoughts and feelings about each and every one. Right now we're up to episode 25 of season 4. This one is called In Theory. It was directed by Patrick Stewart, Captain Picard, helms the director's chair. Written by Joe Menosky and Ronald D. Moore. It aired back on June the 3rd, 1991. In this episode, Data accepts the affections of shipmate Jenna Desora and pursues a romantic relationship with her. That's pretty much it. So Clay is going to stop by to talk about all the ups and downs of getting into a relationship with an android after this.
Every night, Miles leaves his socks on the floor. When we got married, I made the mistake of picking them up a few times. Then I realized if I kept it up, I'd be doing it for the rest of my life. So I stopped, figuring he'd get the point and do it himself. One night goes by, 2, a week, 10 days. By now, there's a pile of socks half a meter high.
Oh, come on, it wasn't half a meter.
After 2 weeks, I couldn't stand it anymore. I bundled them up and put them in the cleaning processor. And I'm still doing it.
And a very good job she does of it, too.
Keiko, you sound just like Data. He came over to my quarters the other day to give me a music lesson, and he said the funniest thing. How did you put it? About the mess?
I believe I observed that you seemed to have an aversion to orderliness. But it was not intended as a humorous remark.
So, before we started, he gallantly offered to help me straighten up.
And a very good job I did of it, too.
In Theory, the Data romance. The Data gets a lover, and then Picard pilots the Enterprise around some subspace anomalies. Clay, how are you?
I'm good this time.
Unless
I screwed this one up somehow as well too.
We had technical difficulties. We made it about 10 minutes in. We made some incredible salient points about this episode.
I'm just on a roll. I thought I watched the wrong episode last time, and this time I screwed up the recording. So
it's taking the wind out of our sails. But yeah, we're here to talk about In Theory, which is a romance episode, which Modi and I did a couple episodes ago. The episode The Host, which is a Dr. Crusher love story.
Ooh.
This is a Data love story. We weren't too impressed with The Host as a love story, mostly because we came to the conclusion that Trek doing love stories is not particularly the best case scenario for a show that only has 40 minutes to really sell you on a story. So anyone in love always comes across, if they only show up for one episode, it always comes across as you don't really believe that they're in love, just because you've only just met this guy or
Right.
this girl in this case. I think while it doesn't work in the Host case, it works well in this case because the last point I made before we realized that we screwed up last time is I think this episode is fascinating just because Data is being paired with a emotionally unstable character.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I don't know if it's intentional. It sort of is. I don't know if it's just the writers writing a woman poorly without the intention of her being that, like if they just have this sort of like, if Moore and Menosky, who wrote this, are going through a bad breakup or something and they write this this kind of woman character, because I don't think the episode focuses on how sort of like unstable she is in a weird way. She's not like a serial killer, but she's definitely very needy.
Yeah. This episode actually reminded me of, those scenes in a movie like Weekend at Bernie's where they cut away from the party to where Bernie's lying there dead and some woman is next to him and he's like, oh my God, this is my new boyfriend Bernie. He's the best.
Yep.
Just look at the way he sits there all cute and doesn't say anything. Like the woman doesn't realize that he's a dead body.
It's always the kind of character that just talks at the dead body and doesn't need an answer back from him. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And it was kind of that, but it was obviously it was a much more interesting setup. Why?
She seems to have a thing for unemotional men because she broke up with her ex Jeff because he was emotionally unavailable, and
Jeff.
she paired up with Data, who is totally emotionally unavailable.
Yeah, she just kept following that road to its inevitable conclusion, I suppose, in terms of the men she's into. So maybe dating Data is hitting bottom for her or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. It's a little bit. So I mean, what would you think overall of this episode in general, as a whole?
I thought it was great. I really liked it a lot. I didn't care for the B plot because it was really boring and it had nothing to do with anything else that was happening. And it just feels really tacked on, and I don't know. It felt like the writers needed to put in something. They were like, "Oh, well, if we don't have anything blow up, or the kids aren't going to watch, or something." Yeah,
no, I agree with you. And Moore had a quote about just saying that he didn't want to do it. It was an annoying storytelling thing that the structure of the show required. He had to write a stupid subspace anomaly that the Enterprise was battling at the same time that Data was doing his thing. It's kind of a trope of the show. It's becoming more noticeable now that we're into episodes that focus on character arcs, because there's always a major character story, and then on the side, the B plot is always the sci-fi story that's going on. And when the sci-fi story is so disconnected from the main story, it's really obvious. And it almost feels like the show came in 15 minutes short, and they had to throw something into it.
Yeah, I don't know why they don't. So though in that quote, he says, "Oh, I had to, write the stupid thing, blah 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 blah, to fill time or whatever." Why don't you take another minute and write something that actually involves the story?
Yeah,
like you could keep that same setup, but do something more interesting with it. Like, I don't know, have like if Jeff is the guy who has to pilot the ship.
Yep.
So then, and Data has to choose the person to pilot the ship, and he chooses Jeff. So then you think, oh, well, is this a program that he's written to involve jealousy? Because he's written programs that involve fighting and other weird cliche relationship things, or is it just the right decision to make in the moment?
Right? Is Jeff the best man for the job? And he's
clearly Jeff
totally
is not
rational.
the best at anything.
No, Jeff sounds like a real wet blanket.
I haven't met the guy, but he sounds terrible.
Although he's popular enough for Geordi to know him on like a full name basis. Although Geordi's, maybe that kind of fits into the Geordi character as well, I guess. But
if they travel in the same circles, then Jenna is better off without him.
We talked before. The B plot's so abstract and so detached and so undramatic that they make the weird choice where Picard insists on piloting the shuttlecraft for no particular reason.
It's really weird.
It's really pointless, and the drama is always. I always think it's a weakness when the technobabble, when it's someone basically counting down. There's no drama there, and Picard just saying, "Oh, here's one, here's another one," and then having to mime shifts in G-force, even though when the ship goes to warp, you don't notice the G-force, so I don't know why turning slightly causes G's to happen.
Warp shield, I guess.
Yeah, maybe something like that. It's so pointless. It's just the shuttlecraft flying through space and the Enterprise following behind it and basically avoiding little invisible bubbles in space that they have to get around.
Yeah, I actually rewound it because I thought I missed something. Because I couldn't figure out why Picard piloting the ship was such like a hard stance decision that he had to make.
He gives no reason for it. He's just
he just says, I'm the captain. I should be the one who fixed this. It's like, well, by that rationale, you should have been dead a long time ago.
Yeah, I don't. It's such a bizarre, weird thing to do. Although Patrick Stewart directed this episode. It's his debut as a director.
Right.
I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Probably not. But it was just I would have thought someone else would do it just so Picard would not have to be in as many scenes if you're directing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it seems like the kind of thing where it's like, well, if we need something to raise some stakes, how do we raise the stakes as quickly as possible? And you put the captain's life in danger.
Yeah,
I mean, that whole thing I was into when they started hinting at it, like when they were doing the thing about someone breaking into Data's room and moving everything around, and Picard was like, oh, maybe it's a ghost. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But the payoff was just really stupid.
Yeah. really dumb. I did like the scene where the stuff falls through Picard's table, and Worf goes in and sort of treats him as the, like, you didn't accidentally knock this off. And Picard, no, I did not.
I think that was one of my favorite Picard, second favorite Picard moment in this episode was when he calls Worf into his room, and when Worf comes in, Picard's on the floor with a bunch of crap under his desk, and he just looks at Worf and goes, "What do you make of this?" Sir, I think you might need a nap.
I know, sir. You're getting up there in years. Things have gone horribly wrong. I think this is a show with a bunch of good moments for a lot of the characters. I really love the sequence where Data's going around asking people for advice.
Yeah.
The actors have really settled into their characters, especially Frakes. Who's got his leg up on the table and could not be more enthusiastic about Data being in this relationship.
Oh my God. I wish they had gotten rid of the B plot entirely and the rest of it had just been Riker teaching Data how to go on dates.
Yes. I needed to see the scene where Riker picks out the flowers and says, "These have worked for me."
Absolutely.
That's pure goodness. I mean, I think it shows how the show has sort of grown, where the characters all make sense in what they do. Like Geordi is like sort of mumbling and not really sure. He's like in all 1,000 directions about which way to go, and he eventually just gives up and says, "I have no idea." Mm-hmm. Troy offers some very counselor-y advice about, like, don't hurt her. This is more than a science experiment. Worf is concerned with the chain of command, which is nice. Riker is happy to just be involved and is sort of gleeful about this. And Picard is curt with Data, just saying when he figures it out, he'll come tell Data what he's figured out.
That was my favorite Picard moment, because he was like, "I know what this is about, and I have no idea."
Right. Just the... because Data calls to him as he's walking away, and just the look on Stewart's eyes as he turns around to have to explain that he knows that Data has been asking everyone on board, I guess, about what to do. What did you find the relationship of everybody on the crew to have a good reaction to Data being in a relationship?
What do you mean by good?
As
like
in
favorable?
As in sort of a believable response. Do you think that there was enough variety in response, I guess, is what I'm hinting at?
Yes, but I could have gone with somebody taking the negative standpoint, because they all seem to be, I mean, I understand they all relate to Data in a way where they're not going to treat him like an android.
Yep.
But again, I've said this many times, I feel like there should be someone who treats him like an android.
Yeah.
Not like in a prejudicial way or anything, but just like talks realistically about stuff like this.
Yes. I was thinking that during the breakup. It's like, it's kind of an ideal breakup for Jenna. It's like you can tell him anything, and it doesn't matter to him, which I think that's what you're kind of talking about. No one goes along with it. If I was directing this, I would have had the scene where Data and Jenna are sitting with O'Brien and Keiko. Mm-hmm. I would have had the O'Briens be a little bit more like, looking at each other looking at each other as being like, what the hell is going on here? Because that scene's a little bit cringy.
Yeah.
Because she's so clearly jumping into a relationship with Data. And the O'Briens seem to be totally on the up and up with it, which I think was kind of a weird decision to have them do that.
Yeah, if anybody in that cast or on that ship would be negative about it, it would be O'Brien, I think. Yeah. That's a good role for him to play. Although, what I did like about that scene is that Data actually tells a joke.
Yes.
And it's clear. So
I think this is a good Data humor episode. There's a bunch of lines where it actually works in a way that doesn't make me go like, oh yeah, there you go, there's that joke.
Yeah, and he tells a joke in a way that, like, you can tell on his face that he's just running a program.
Yep.
The one thing that I will say about this episode that I feel like they stood out a little bit is he seems a little more Like the scene when he brings her flowers and then he's like sitting on the couch with his arms out and stuff.
Yeah.
He seems overly robotic
Yes.
in that scene.
Yep.
Like more so than I feel like he ever really has been. He played the joke really well. That came off as like, oh, he's telling a joke, but you can tell it's still him running a program.
Right.
But he was actively like pretending he was a robot in that other scene, which was kind of weird.
Yeah, and it ties into I guess he's just getting better at the programming in the later scene where like where he's talking in that sort of like creepy voice.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah. That's true. That's a good point.
I guess he's developing the program to like, and at that point it's just not working as well. But I kind of agree. I think that maybe a little bit of the flaw is that his relationship is played a little broadly. Mm-hmm. It's like it doesn't focus so much on his weaknesses as a character as much as his weaknesses as his inability to make this program that he's trying to run work. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense. Like he really just starts fucking up because his attempts at romance are so clunky.
Yeah.
As opposed to his natural response of not being emotional with it.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I feel like it's more interesting from Jenna's standpoint than it is from Data's, because I feel like while Data is going out of his way to try and make it work the best that he knows how,
yep,
he's not. How do I put this? Him being a robot and having no feelings does not allow for any sort of emotional weight given to the decisions he does or doesn't make.
Yeah.
So he's just doing A to B to C, looking at the results of his equations and then adjusting them for the next time. Whereas she is actively trying to engage in a relationship with basically, a telephone.
Yes. Yep.
And that's where it was really interesting for me that he's not doing anything wrong. He's just doing what he does.
Yep.
And you can't make really a moral judgment on what he's doing because he's just trying to do what she wants, like what he thinks is what a human relationship should be like. And
in a way he's trying to sort of please her more than anything.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's a really interesting setup. And I think they do some really good stuff with it.
It's a do you think that the Jenna character is written appropriately for what this episode is asking of her? I'd have a hard time. I think it was the right decision to make her a little bit needy and a little bit, so she's on the rebound basically.
Yeah.
I think that's the right decision to make, because I'd have a hard time, especially with a character that you have never met before. I'd have a hard time anyone actually legitimately falling in love with Data. Mm-hmm. So the rebound thing makes sense. I do wish that the script pushed a little bit more on the fact that, as we were talking about before, if someone brings up the negatives, Geordi kind of brings up the fact that she's on the rebound, but he doesn't stick with it. Yeah. I wish some character had been more aware of why this wouldn't work, and that would sort of tie into a criticism of the Jenna character from the show itself. Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. If there was a woman on the ship who was on the rebound, Riker would have been there first anyway.
Yes. I mean, that's the I needed another scene with Riker asking how things had gone or something. Yeah. Like, do you mind if I step in here? Is that okay with you?
So you guys are like, over?
Did you delete that program, Data? Is that deleted?
And I mean, honestly, the thing what we have to remember is the real reason that he can't connect with Jenna is because his robot heart still belongs to Tasha. So
yeah. I mean, clearly.
But yeah, Jenna. I mean, I think I agree. She needed to be a bit needy, and it's also, I don't know. Like, there's a weird, like the friend zone Data at the beginning. I thought was hilarious.
Yes.
Because it's like playing out any scene from like a teen movie where the hot girl has the guy who's just friends, and then she realizes that, oh, this guy is great and I should probably date him.
Yep.
But instead of the guy who's just friends secretly being in love with her, he's just a robot. It's like, wow, he knows so much about everything. He's so smart. And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, he's just a computer. It's like you're falling in love with a fax machine.
Yeah, and it's his like as much as she feels towards him, his response when I think Guinan asks him what he thinks about her, and he gives that sort of funny response about she doesn't really understand something about like the warp drive or something.
Yes, yeah.
It's like that would be that's his ideal sort of like breakdown of a relationship. And
speaking of that Guinan scene, I was really happy that they did go to everybody else on the ship, because after that Guinan scene, I was like, man, this is another instance of this is exactly what Troy should be doing.
Yep.
But so when he does go to Troy, it was nice to see that she actually got involved instead of just being
it was a competent
left on the floor.
A competent Troy scene. Like it made sense for her job. She doesn't have much to do in this episode, but not many of the characters outside of Data don't really have anything to do, except for Picard, I suppose. But yeah, it's a good Guinan scene. She works in conjunction with Troy, which is nice to see every once in a while. Sort of different. I guess it's the show proving that they can be different characters, even though Guinan tends to trump what Troy does usually. Mm-hmm. It is possible to like differentiate them, which is nice. Let's see here.
I did think it was really, really funny how they were having that gift discussion over that weird piece of warped plexiglass that she brings him.
That you dig out of like a landfill or something. Like that was just such a weird.
It's like a freshman sculpture art project or something.
She was. I think you get a real insight to what dating Jenna would be like in real life. Like she brings you a gift and then isn't happy when you put it in some place. You know, she's like, you should put that in a more prominent location. I felt bad for Data in that situation. And
I mean, I don't think that's. I think if Data just needs to meet the right woman, and unfortunately, she was killed by a slime monster.
Yeah,
so.
it's too bad. Killed as a red shirt would go out. That's too bad. And I mean, let's see. We talked about the B plot line. We've talked about the A plot line, which is interesting.
One thing I did notice that I have noticed in a bunch of other episodes, which I really enjoy, is that everybody. So when they're on the communicators or talking to people over like the computer from the bridge,
yep, everybody
talks in a normal voice except Riker. Riker talks like my dad on a cell phone.
He's just It's the I think it's the
everyone's like, it's like Captain Picard, can you give your coordinates? Like, yes, Commander Riker, what do you think? I think you should take a left. A left.
He's sort of he like lifts his chin up and sort of yells at the air too, which is a nice touch. He just doesn't.
Is the antenna up?
Hello, are you there? It's funny. There was the like blooper reels on the this DVD, and the funniest thing I think, or the thing I never really think about, is when they're doing those scenes where they're talking over the communicators. Mm-hmm. It's a producer who's reading the other person's lines.
Yeah,
so it's like. When they're recording it, they just show like Picard, and all of them acting normal, and you hear just a producer in the background saying the lines, and it's kind of weird to me that they don't just have the person say it to them. Like it just feels weird to have a producer who's just like, yeah, it's me, I'm Riker down here, and then they're acting dramatically off of that. It's just strange.
Well, it might be just like a scheduling thing.
Yeah, just makes it easier.
That stuff is fairly common, I think.
Yep. It's something, and if I didn't mention it in this recording, I did want to mention that I thought that the Lieutenant Van Meter, who fell through the floor and died, was kind of a cool effect here.
Yeah, I don't know who has to clean that up, but that's gross.
It's not a high paying job. It's not an officer's job to fix that. I don't know why she sort of became a mannequin once she fell through either, but it was cool nonetheless. I could have done with a little like slouch over or something, but
yeah, it's funny because that thing in and of itself, I feel like, for as crappy of a B plot that it turned out to be, I feel like it could have been a really interesting and full episode, because having that sort of ghostly shit happen on the ship is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's. I think that one of the bigger problems with it is that it, for basically 99% of the episode, it results in like really inconsequential stuff happening.
Right.
Like it's basically stuff is falling off tables. That's the extent of it. Where it seems like what they eventually encounter seems like it would be much more dangerous than they actually portray for most of the episode.
Yeah. I feel like there was, there could have been some opportunity there to really stretch it out and do some really interesting things, like have a shuttle fall halfway between the shuttle bay and whatever's under the shuttle. So that's I don't know. Some
it appears
more,
outside the ship. It's like, how did it get out there? Things like that. Like it's
or
floating
people
away.
start like falling through floors all the way into like the engine room or something. They could have done some kind of pretty interesting stuff with it. I don't know. What the payoff would be. It would need to be different than this.
Yeah, so it'd probably still be unsatisfying as much as this one is. But
cosmic poltergeist is a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Well, I think we've talked about this one to an extent. I'm going to play a clip. Me and Clay are going to come back. We're going to give our final thoughts for In Theory.
Jenna, are we no longer a couple?
No, we're not.
Then I will delete the appropriate program.
I'll see you later.
Hello, Spot.
All right, In Theory. Let's give our final opinions for this one. I guess I'll go first.
Wait, do you actually want the opinions, or do you want them in theory?
I want...
Like, in theory, I give this a 5 or a 4.
if you're
but
just
actually...
this, as opposed to the real, it's like a scientific method or something. Or your proposal looked really good, but the actual work is kind of garbage here. I guess I'll go first to sort of mix things up. I think this is kind of a tough one to grade for me because I like the romance subplot. I don't think it pulls it off quite strongly enough where I'd be like, oh yeah, that's a great memorable episode right there. The B plot is total garbage filler rather. I think I'm going to settle this one just on like a 3 out of 5. I don't know if it really epitomizes anything. It's sort of interesting for the Data character, but I think it really only hits interestingly for Data towards the end, and just his response to things. But outside of that, I think it's enjoyable enough episode that had potential that the show wasn't really willing to look at, and that's where we ended up with. So what do you think of In Theory?
Well, In Theory, I really like this episode. I would give it a 4. Only because I wouldn't give it a 5 because Data doesn't go consult the Joe Piscopo routine for women advice.
Yeah, that's necessary at this point.
But aside from that, I would give it a 4 because I think the stuff they do with Data is really interesting. I think they do it pretty well. But that secondary plot is just so boring. It's so lame. At first, I got kind of interested at first when the first thing happens where they go into Data's room and like the cat got out and stuff, and my girlfriend and I were both like, "Oh shit, this is going to turn into like Fatal Attraction or something."
Right. Yeah.
Or like Jeff is going to come back and try to kick Data's ass, or I don't know. But
Jeff was here.
Jeff.
Was it a mistake to never meet Jeff?
No, I think it's better that we didn't meet Jeff.
Yeah,
Unless,
I don't think you need to meet him.
I think the only way that meeting Jeff makes sense is if
he's like R2-D2. He's like a real robot.
he's a broom with a bucket with a face painted on it. No, I mean if Jeff being involved somehow is what causes the end of the Data relationship, then maybe it's interesting.
Yeah.
Or again, like I said before, it could have been interesting for Data to run a jealousy subroutine or something that, like if he sees them talking together, how does he react? He's a robot, so he shouldn't react at all. But if he's running his romance whatever, then maybe he should get kind of, puffed up a little bit. You know,
Yeah.
that would have been kind of interesting.
Yeah, 'cause as opposed to what happens here, which is he's just kind of clunkily, like his programming is bad, which ultimately causes the breakup. You know, like he's not good enough at doing the programming to keep her interested in him.
Yep.
Whereas if he was a little bit more successful and like ran like you're saying, a jealousy program, it's a bit more interesting that he's doing these sort of understandable outcomes and he is totally disconnected from them.
Right.
Yeah.
But I would give it a 4 because I think the stuff with Data is really good, and I think it's really funny, and it, like you were saying, it's a good. Him touching all the main characters is pretty honest to the way that the characters are, and it's good stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a good character episode, if anything. Has 2 good jokes. The "Don't look at me" and Data turns away from Guinan, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then the cat's out of the bag and he says, "Where? Spot?"
Yep.
So those are. I think they're getting better at playing Data, not understanding idioms. You
Yes,
know, like
yeah.
the idiom doesn't seem to come out of nowhere like it used to in the early seasons, and he would just go, "I don't understand what that means." So they're improving on that way in that regard. Anyway, I gave it a 3. Clay gives it a 4. You guys enjoyed the content today? You're on YouTube, like and comments. Appreciate it. If you're on iTunes, a rating and a review is very much appreciated.
In theory, according to the algorithm of YouTube and everything, in theory that should work for me. We're almost at the end of season 4. Me and Clay are going to be back in a couple days with the final episode of season 4, which is called Redemption. So, Clay, thank you very much for coming on. Oh, no problem. Hopefully this actually works and doesn't get erased before you put it up for some technical error on my end.
If it doesn't get erased, you guys will hear us, and then we're going to see us again in a couple days.
This will be great to listen to in theory.